Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Meet the Entrepreneurs Cleantech event. I'm just going to do a couple announcements, and then we will have John Doctorome, our Cleantech lead advisor, come to the stage to do a quick ice-breaking activity with you and to introduce the panelists. So if you came last week, you would have heard about the workshops that we're running for those interested in the Upstart competition. On the registration table at the back, there's a brochure that you can check out. The deadline to apply is actually this Friday, December 9th. We've received a lot of interest, so we might run two separate workshop series, one in January for those really interested in the Upstart competition, because the Upstart competition deadline is February 3rd. And for other E101 participants who aren't interested in the Upstart competition but want to do the workshops, let us know in the email you send us, and if we have enough of those, we'll run a separate series in February. So with that, you saw that we're sort of marking those who are in Cleantech so that it's easier for you to talk to each other at the reception after. I think what we'll be doing is after the icebreaker activity, we'll have a panel presentation to about 7 o'clock, and then we're going to take Q&A. And if there's lots of questions, we'll go to 7:30. If there isn't, then we'll end early, and we welcome you to join us in the atrium for some light snacks, and there'll be a cash bar. So with that, I would like to welcome John Doctorome to the stage. Just a couple notes on John. He leads our Cleantech practice here at Mars. He's been active in innovation and the commercialization of renewable energy technologies, both as an entrepreneur and working for publicly traded companies. If you were here for our last Lived It lecture, you know that he worked for Hydrogenics. He was also the co-founder of Sustainable Energy Technologies, and he worked as a consultant for the Pembina Institute. So welcome, John.
So now we're going to get started with the panel. And, oh, perfect. I just want to start off, we'll go through some introductions here. And I guess I'll start down at the far end with Curtis Van Wellingham, who is the CEO of a company called HydroStore. And Curtis, I first met Curtis about a year ago, or a little over a year ago, through a program that we run here at Mars, the Embedded Executive, where this company HydroStore needed to get someone in that could really take the reins of it in the CEO position. And Curtis has a background in consulting with Deloitte, where he focused on the energy industry. He was a fantastic fit for HydroStore. When the funding dried up, he stayed with HydroStore, which is a great success for that program and what we always want to see. So Kurt, maybe you could start off just by telling us what HydroStore does. And I know that recently you guys finished your first demo here in Toronto to prove out the technology, and you've got third-party validation now, so clearly things are going on the right track. And maybe you could just elaborate on what exactly it is that you guys do.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for the opportunity to chat with everyone here today. So HydroStore has developed a grid-scale energy storage product or solution. So this is kind of, when it's windy at night, there's excess electricity, what do you do with it? So traditionally, you'd pump water up a hill, and it's called pumped hydro, and then let gravity bring it down. We have a different way of doing it. What we do is we compress air. We draw in natural air from the environment, compress it into bladders underwater. And that's a very low-cost way of storing electricity. Whenever you want it back, you let the weight of the water force the air back out. So that's generally what HydroStore does. They're big systems, multi-million-dollar systems that you would sell to wind farms or utilities or cities. And in terms of kind of where we're at, we're still pre-revenue. The company's been in operation for about 2 years now. And through that time, filed a lot of patents, did a lot of engineering, and have a pilot system working just off at Tommy Thompson Park here in Toronto, and planning our big grid-scale demonstration project that we hope to announce in the next 30 to 60 days with Toronto Hydro, building a big system about 5 kilometers offshore here in Lake Ontario.
Great. Thanks, Kurt. Our next panelist is Pushkar Kumar with Green Mantra. He's the CEO of a company called Green Mantra. And we met about a year and a half ago when I first joined Mars. Pushkar was actually the very first intake meeting that I did with a new venture. And I thought, wow, if they're all going to be like this is easy. Because they have a fantastic technology that they're working on. He recently raised the capital that he needs to build his manufacturing plant, and has a couple business partners involved with it now. Maybe if you could just take a few minutes to tell us about Green Mantra and what you guys do.
Hey, thanks a lot for bringing me here. I always fear the stage and the light, so bear with me. So what we do is we are based on a technology which allows us to convert recycled plastics to other hydrocarbons. Now, hydrocarbons like lubricating oil, waxes, or greases. So we increase the value of a material from $1.1 a kg to roughly around $3 a kg, which is what the waxes sell for. So one commodity, which is a waste, and to another commodity, which is a higher value commodity. And we just try to make a couple of nicks in the middle. So that's what we are. Good thing is Mars had given us a lot of understanding and how to do the business. When we came in here, I did not have much idea. I was thinking it's going to be cakewalk, it's going to be very easy. But then 1 year has passed. Now it's after a year that I've successfully at least raised money to get things moving. So it's been a long journey, but a very nice journey.
Nice. Our third panelist right beside me is Brent Harris, and he's the CTO with Sustainable Energy Technologies. And I've known Brent for over 20 years now, which is disturbing when I think about that. We started off at a university in engineering, and we would stay up late dreaming about renewable energy systems and what needed to happen to change the grid and to change the world. And what came out of that is Sustainable Energy Technologies. Today they are a strong inverter supplier to the solar power market and have over 1,200 of the second generation products deployed, and double digits percentage-wise on the inverter market here in Ontario. Now that I've sort of described it, Brent, maybe you could go into a little more detail on what you guys do.
Yeah, we make inverters primarily for solar power systems. That's where we're selling today. We have a unique technology that improves the performance of the system and gives the designer flexibility to match the rooftop requirements. A lot of the first solar power systems to be put in are ideal, well engineered, propped up at exactly the right angle, but those opportunities are gone, and solar power is now being deployed on facades, on any rooftop, whether it's east facing, west facing, whether there are obstructions. And the system design needs to be tolerant, because when you have shade on one module, it can affect the output of many other modules when they're tied in series. So our approach puts the modules in parallel. If one module is shaded, it only affects the output of that module, so you have the flexibility to put solar in a lot more places than you could before. I think that might be good. We'll probably get into a lot of the detail of the company's been around since 1998. In the introduction, John was a co-founder of the company, and we can talk about the history of the last 14 years.
So maybe to get the questions kicked off, we asked everyone to mention their biggest success or their biggest challenge that they've experienced. And I think it would be good to ask the same of you guys, and maybe we'll start off with the challenges and then get into the successes. But whoever wants to start, maybe talking about the one challenge that's kind of been the biggest thing to overcome.
You know, I think for us, one of the first things that we put in place was getting a utility host, a partner to help us prove out the technology and give us that credibility in the marketplace and stuff. We drove around, it was about 6 months knocking on doors, sending letters, using our contacts in our network, and trying to get that utility to say, yes, I'll put that on my grid, I'll use it, and I'll tell you if it's working or not. We were driving all around, flying around, wasting a lot of time. But once we had that partner in place and got their agreement and got them on side, it's amazing the other things that fell into place right after, whether it was raising seed capital, getting other partners to the table. It just all seemed to start falling into place once you had that one cornerstone. So I think that was a big challenge that we had early on. We felt we weren't going anywhere, we weren't making any traction, and then boom, they said, yeah, we'll take it on, and really appreciate Toronto Hydro being that innovative and welcoming, if you will, and ever since then, things have really started to fall in place for us.
Yeah, you can see that being a common thing for people is getting that first customer, the key early adopter to take a chance on you. Pushkar?
For me, the biggest challenge was very similar to this, but instead of customer, getting the access to capital. People used to call me to meetings earlier just for the entertainment value. Like, you are coming here, converting this plastic into wax. What is wax? Come here, let's discuss. So it was very interesting. But over a period of time, when people realized that I'm there to stay, and I was in the period while knocking the doors, I met a couple of my fellow graduates from Ivy. They were more understanding about the technology. I could help them understand, and they eventually licensed the technology to do the same thing what I'm doing here in Europe. So that really made people think, okay, this is something which is real, because a known entrepreneur, known set of guys are putting stake on the ground. And that really snowballed into people started talking to me much more seriously instead of entertainment value. Yeah, this is a business value, business proposition. Things started snowballing, and it worked out. That was one of the big challenges for us.
All right. And Brent, 14 years, I know there's been a few challenges, but if you could pick one for us.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest challenge is, for us has been moving from those first customers where you kind of build batch orders, you get a big order, okay, we'll build for you, and moving to a continuous production model for our product. It's a little different type of product than you guys have, but selling a $2,500 piece of equipment and trying to build the volumes from dozens to hundreds to thousands. And how do you plan that financially, and how do you manage that with your staff? When do you ramp up staff? When do you stretch and do as much as you can? That's really been the toughest transition for the company, and we're getting through that milestone right now here in Ontario.
Brent, you raise a good point on staff and ramping up, and I think a challenge that people often have is finding the talent that they need at a given time to take the business forward. Maybe you could comment a little more on, have you been able to get the talent that you needed, and what have been some of the key roles that have really been important to you guys going forward?
Well, I think, first of all, I think we haven't had too much trouble finding good talent. Being in the industry we're in attracts a lot of very motivated and very capable people that want to make a difference and bring green energy to the world. So we've always had a very good set of candidates to select. I think the trick is choosing the right person at the right time and finding people that are flexible, because you may end up in a different role 6 months after you're hired than what was discussed at your job interview, and that's just kind of part of the business, and moving with the market and understanding where the demand for the product is. You've got to listen to the customers first, and the whole team has to act as a team and move with the company and meet those needs. So in terms of hiring the right talent, I think that's the key variable. And then the other one is just the timing and trying to anticipate when you're going to need that capability, and hiring early enough, say 3 to 6 months in advance, that you actually have the capability in place when you need it. Would be the two challenges.
Yeah. another question that I have, Curtis and Pushkar, Brent as well. All of you are working on businesses and products that are really global in their scope. There's markets throughout Europe that can use your product, especially in your case, Curtis, with energy storage. I always think of Germany and Denmark and those kinds of regions where they have a lot of renewable energy, and energy storage is a big issue. How do you feel, what are the advantages or disadvantages of trying to start a company here in Toronto that has a global market?
Well, it is tricky, and I think one of the important things is you need a local customer sponsor. It'd be pretty tough to go and sell something in Germany if no one in Canada is buying it. I think you probably see that with the CANDU reactors in the nuclear space, the importance of the Ontario sale. So it's absolutely critical that you have a local partner and a local reference customer, if you will. But after that, people are used to dealing global. I mean, I've been to Europe, South America recently, and talking to customers. They're very interested in it. And then we have EDC and certain government programs that help de-risk some of those export-oriented. They support you when you're exporting. So I think there's a lot of stuff in place in Canada to support you going global, but you kind of need something to build from. You can't just start global, at least in my experience.
Now, Pushkar, your business has its roots originally in India. You've had some success in establishing some operations in Europe. How are you finding Toronto and Canada compared to doing business in those other regions?
See, one of the lucky decisions which I took was like establishing myself in Canada. If nothing else, when you are in global economy, you see how the economies are faring at the end of it. And Canada happens to be one of the much more stable economies. And if you are producing a product which is stable and it's a commodity in nature, you've got to be producing and starting up from a place or region which is very stable. And Canada happens to be the one of them. So the base being very stable, what we saw was when we started producing on a test level here, it really helped us in seeing the product offtake with the customers. Customer was stable, they had a decent demand going forward, they felt much more easier to try out new things. So it became much easier for us. Europe has its own set of turmoil, same as the case in India. India differs in the way from Canada is, like they really prefer to adapt a technology which is already accepted elsewhere in the world. And if it's Western world, it's all the more better. So what we see is when we establish here, now they understand it's a established technology, it's a standard wax, standard product. So we are seeing much better product offtake and acceptance in India. So it's really helpful to be, it's lucky to be here and starting here. And and what we see is the ecosystem for startup is much better here in Canada as against at least in India. That's the two things which I know. So it was a fortunate decision which was just taken, and I feel really good about it.
Okay. I want to maybe change tracks a little bit here now and talk about capitalizing your business and getting the funds that you need in place in order to grow it. There's some different perspectives up here and some different paths up here regarding how they went about that. And Brent, maybe we can start off with you and you can talk about what path sustainable energy took.
We founded the company in 1998, and we took it public on the CDNX Venture Exchange in September 1999. We started the company in Calgary, and at that time there was not a big venture capital community in Calgary. It's very mining, oil and gas oriented investment community, and public offerings or reverse takeovers are a very popular way to fund new startups. So that was our opportunity, and that's the way we raised our first money. we went public with our, basically with a concept to take wind turbines and add them to remote diesel grids, offset diesel fuel consumption. I can follow along where the money comes along, but we found this inverter technology that helped enhance the integration of the wind turbine with the diesels, and brought that on board and started that integration and getting to know the inverter business, and then realized that that fuel cell systems needed inverters, and that our inverter happened to be an excellent match to fuel cell systems. So our entire business changed. The investors at that time, this would have been in 2000, 2001, were very interested in the fuel cell market, and we shifted gears with our company and went into the fuel cell market and raised our money there. Since then, it's been an interesting process. I've been involved in most of the fundraising rounds our company has done. My CEO certainly handles that directly, with a background in investment banking and as a lawyer, and does a great job telling our story and finding investors that will be interested. There certainly are a lot of investors that want to invest in new ventures but are not comfortable investing in a company that's publicly traded, so that's closed some doors for us before we even get to tell our story. So that's been a bit of a challenge, but it also gives other investors the liquidity that they look for. So I think these days it's a little more typical to go the venture capital route, keep the company private for a little bit longer until the revenues are in place, and then go public. But that was the investment climate at the time when we started, and that's how we've been on the venture exchange since 1999.
Great. And Pushkar, maybe you could talk about how you've funded the business so far.
So it was a mix of 2-3 sources, the way we ended up funding. A couple of good government programs in which, bank loan programs in which they fund up to $350,000 for CapEx, so that had come in handy. A part of it also came in from angel investor. Like, if somebody who's starting early, what I really say is to try not to go immediately to VCs. It's always better off and much more easier. Terms are friendlier if you go for angel investors. Angel investors like you, as like-minded people who have already made it big, understand the different business, how to grow a business, and they usually try to come on board. So that's the route which we took. Brought in a couple of angel investors, which also formed the management team. But what it helped us tell to the market is the couple of seasoned guys are coming in, forming investor management team. Now we are established company. So that's when we thought, let's now go to the VC community. So we went out on a VC community, and Mars also had a great fund called Investment Accelerator Fund, which funds on next generation technologies, different technologies. So we went with them. Again, very friendly terms, great management, great investment guys who understands different business, different growth needs, and are also able to connect you to different people. So that's how we went out. We first went with the angel investment, much better, friendlier terms, then went for the VC. And hopefully next round is going to be a bigger round in which we try to go to much bigger VCs or private equity guys. But those are the sharks. We try to shy away right now from them.
Excellent. Very similar, I think, to Pushka in the fact that we funded it really ourselves. So the founders put in capital. Once we burned through that, it was friends and family. So we managed to recruit those people in, and I must say that's a stressful proposition when you have your mother-in-law investing company and asking you how it's going. So that was those were the early days. That was challenging, and we were able to get an angel on board early, which really helped. It added a lot to our credibility and gave us a lot more funds to work with. We then leveraged that to get a couple of grant programs to help us build out R&D and whatnot. And then we applied for much bigger kind of demonstration grants in the multi-million-dollar range. Got a couple of those under our belt, and now with those, we're just in the process of closing our first round with the venture capital firms. So Doing it that way helps you keep more equity in the company yourself, especially when you can kind of count some of that grant money as yours. Yeah, that's kind of how we funded it.
The next thing that I want to ask you guys about is your customers and your go-to-market strategy. Who are your customers and how you're going about getting them? Brent,
To
you wanna
start,
start?
it's an interesting question for us. Our ultimate customer is the owner of the solar power system, who owns the system on his roof and wants to get the most energy out of it possible. However, that customer never really makes the equipment choice. It's the installer that puts the system on. So as we're putting our value proposition together, you want to focus on the installer and what's going to make his business easy, but also give him the tools to to sell the technology and sell the solution to his end customer. For us, though, we've gone back and forth as to the best way, but really we've got to focus on that installer and make sure that installer is very happy with the product we've got, but also with the service that we're giving him is very important. And just happy overall with how he's able to operate his business, and anything we can do to make his business easier to operate is that's our customer focus.
At least, for us, our job's somewhat easier in the fact that for our technology to work, you need to have fairly deep water, greater than 50 meters deep within 4 or 5 kilometers to shore. So just by that, the nature of our product, you're able to kind of use the Google Earth products of the world and fairly quickly zoom in on where are the big cities or the areas of large wind that'll have wind developments that have deep bodies of water. And you start zooming in on those most optimal sites. And we're building a database internally. Again, we're kind of pre-commercial. We're proving our technology out here locally, but we've already got a roster of hundreds of utilities and project developers globally that sit on ideal sites for our technology. And we're starting to just do direct calling type thing and inviting them out. We're planning to fly a whole bunch of people here to come out and see the demonstration site. We'll raise up a bunch of these bladders, put on a nice big show for people to try to drum up interest. So we're doing a much more direct, targeted, but again, we're selling kind of $10, $20 million systems versus more of a product that you would put out and mass produce.
So when we started, the product which we sell is really a commodity. In North America itself, it's like a 4 billion commodity. So when we started looking at what customers, how do you attack the market, we realized we can sell waxes pretty much to anything. Wax is a commodity which goes into candle, but if you don't realize, chewing gum is also 60% of it is wax. So we could go from cosmetics company, industrial guys who make adhesives, companies which are into asphalt manufacturing, to anybody. But biggest problem was, where do we concentrate? Too many options causes more paralysis as against let's just start. So what we ended up doing was, let's just focus right now on the easy guys, things. People, we quickly realized the wax market is, there are producers, there are blenders and resellers, and eventual consumer industries. And quickly figured out, even though every step adds around 20% to the margin, but the easiest ones are blenders. They pretty much take any kind of waxes which you produce, they will blend it to their own requirement and supply it to end consumers. But there is always a layer of higher margin. We try to attack the end consumers, let's say industries which are into candle manufacturing or adhesive manufacturing, multi-billion-dollar companies. But we realized the sales cycle is much longer. Like instead of 1 month sales cycle or 2 month sales cycle with a wax blender, you go to 6 months to a year cycle with sales cycle with the end consumers. So we shifted, let's just first in the initial days attack the low-hanging fruits. get few sales, we'll have enough product backing, we'll have enough muscle to go after the end consumers, increase our margin. So right now we are just focused on the industrial segment, onto the blenders. And in North America, there are around 15 to 20 blenders, and each one of them, the typical tier 1 blender will have sales of around $300 to $400 million, to a lower blender which has a sales of around $60 to $80 million. And for us, they do not produce, we give it to them, they are happy, we are happy. So we are targeting right now simple market, low-hanging fruits.
All right. Another question for you guys, and something that would be helpful to people here, is maybe to understand a little bit about what some of the key support organizations that have helped you. Curtis, you mentioned EDC as an example. So what are some of the key support mechanisms or tools that you've used? And the other thing that would be interesting is to hear from you guys other things that would be helpful for entrepreneurs if they existed, some of the key things to help them move their business forward.
Gotcha. Well, a few jump to mind immediately. I mean, in terms of support mechanisms, family and friends for sure. They're some of the biggest. You have those down days. You just want to pack it up. They're there to encourage you to keep going. So they were huge. Mars has been fantastic between the grant programs offered, the education, the mentoring. There's things such as the CEO roundtables where they get us together with other companies in the same boat, and you really share war stories. And I can't tell you how many tips I've picked up, contacts for animation design folks, new legal counsel, all these different things I got through that network. DFATE, Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, they're fantastic. They've got offices in about, 200 cities around the world, and basically free help to help you target new customers, new partners, and everything. And they'll often give you grants to pay 2/3 of trips to go meet new customers and stuff. Export Development Canada's fantastic. In Ontario, there's a program, OCE, Ontario Centers of Excellence, that partners you up with universities to get kind of free research or subsidized research. And then there's bigger programs such as Sustainable Development Technology Canada that helps you with bigger demonstration projects. In Ontario, there's a matching organization through the Ministry of Research and Innovation called the Innovation Demonstration Fund. So I think all of those have been extremely helpful to us. In terms of what else could there be, there's kind of two things that jump to mind. One is public procurement policy. So if the government of Ontario, the government of Canada, the hospitals, the schools would have an opportunity for you to purchase and to be a first customer for new companies and new technologies, like that's very powerful. Often it's better than getting a grant money, getting a reputable customer and your first customer, and having our government, instead of just handing out checks, take a bit of risk and say, we'll try out your product. That would be extremely helpful. And then the last one would be a bit of a leave of absence, entrepreneur leave of absence. It's something I've thought about quite a bit. My previous company, Deloitte, allowed me, I said, I'm going to start a business. It's been a great 7 years, but I'm moving on. And they said, well, that's kind of risky. Why don't you kind of keep your BlackBerry, keep your computer, you'll keep some benefits, your paycheck will go away, but you'll just be on a leave of absence. That way, anytime you need to come back, drop us an email and your paycheck starts the next day. I said, wow, that's fantastic. Made me sleep so much better at night, made my wife sleep so much better at night. And so I think if there was even a national program like that, an entrepreneurship, LOA, save your seat type program, I think it would really encourage more people to take that leap and the risk associated with starting a business. kind of a lot. So.
I need a lot of support.
Yeah, I need a lot of support.
No, we've received a lot of support over the years as well. We've received funding early stage and then demonstration also from IRAP and the TPC program. We've got an ongoing funding arrangement with Alberta Advanced Education and Technology in a partnership with the U of A that's been extremely beneficial. As we developed the inverter, in the early days we did have power electronics engineers working on the kind of the detailed design of the power electronic circuits and the drives and right into the boards. But what we found over time is it was hard to keep those specialists really interested in it as we kind of moved to a more commercial business, more just production and customer orientation. It wasn't exactly what these guys had gone and done their PhDs to do. So this partnership with the University of Alberta is really great because we've got a professor that's very interested in our technology and in specifically wants to research control of grid-tied inverters. And he's got students coming through every year that are very interested to learn and put a lot of energy into advancing our technology. So we're able to access that, have continuity through the professor, and then have the energy of these students that come through for a year at a time. And they find a lot to get excited about with the technology. So that's, in terms of talent and staffing, that's been a very, I guess, an innovative approach for us rather than trying to find just that one right person that's going to be there with us. We've also got support here from Mars. There's a similar organization in Calgary called Calgary Technologies, Inc. that has been very supportive on a networking basis for us there. And we participate in trade associations, CANSIA, Canadian Solar Industries Association. I'm also on the board of WADE Canada, the World Alliance for Decentralized Energy, that's really pushing decentralized energy policy. And that's, you learn a lot there, but you also have a lot of great networking opportunities and can help build the market for your technology. We do a lot of international work as well. I guess I didn't get a chance to talk about that earlier, but we shipped our first inverters in 2002. And we did not have a product certified for Canada until 2010. All our early products went to Germany and Japan and the United States because that's where the rest of the technology development was going on and where the markets were. And we did receive or get a lot of help from the international trade offices, especially the commercial officer at the Japan embassy. Was a great help. That's a very difficult country to navigate, especially coming in with an electronic box in Japan. Here, buy my Canadian electronics. It's an interesting sales proposition, but you need support from all of those. So as far as other support that would be helpful, I mean, the big thing we lacked in the early days was a local market, and I think that's great what you've got here in Ontario. It's kind of the reverse what Kurt was talking about, that we didn't have a domestic markets. We didn't have to answer that question. Like, well, we can't sell anything in Canada. Now the Green Energy Act's come in, and we came home and certified our product to sell here in Ontario, and now we can point to our home success to help as we push into the U.S. market.
See, all these programs are good. There are other programs, government programs, if people are interested, like if you have technology which is working with, as shared with university, you can get a seasoned sales or executive to come in on board. There are programs from OCE which allows you to do that. There are programs for hiring the first couple of key employees which allow through OCE, which can do that. Apart from these programs, what we realized was, what at least I realized was, it's the key personal inside those programs which are more important, as the people who are delivering those programs are more important as against the program itself. Like a couple of key guys which I had in my initial days met with, one was John, who had been helpful, and then there was a person called James Sabrola in another RIC center who had really helped us. Those are the key advisors which you need in the initial days to help you figure out whether this program is relevant to you or some other program is relevant to you. There are enough support. It's just a matter of you latching on to the right set of advisors who's going to help you guide through the entire journey of life called entrepreneurship.
Great. So we will open it up to questions in a few minutes. I just want to maybe the last couple questions I have for you guys is things that I think everyone can learn from. My first question is, what is if you had to pick one thing that you didn't know when you started your business that you now know, that's
You wish you knew earlier?
what do you? Thank you, Brad. Yeah, what do you know now that you wish you knew then, Kurt?
So much. I mean, it's really been a rewarding experience the last kind of year and a half, and feel like grown and learned so much over that time. One thing, probably the first thing is just the positioning of the technology. I mean, it seemed like it was a bit of trial and error, talking to everybody, saying, well, we can store energy, and there's 100 different applications for why you'd want to store energy. And so we were just kind of shotgun approach, and after conversation after conversation, I think it was about 30 different utilities and wind developers we were talking to, we eventually boiled it all down to what is our real value proposition. But by then, we've kind of not already spoiled the well, but you've already talked to a bunch of utilities that aren't probably going to take your meeting next time because you went in with such a high-level concept before. So I think knowing our positioning and strength right out of the gate would have really helped us and probably accelerated things a lot.
Yep.
There have been, every single thing had been challenged. Let me think what had been the biggest challenge. One of the biggest challenges, a biggest thing which I thought I would have understood earlier was how difficult or easy it would be to raise money. That had been one big challenge. I always thought raising money will be, okay, you talk to one guy, maybe he'll understand, and you are done in 15, 20 days. Eventually, what had happened, 1 year, and you are still raising money, and the desire for more money always is there. Now, you finish raising money, we know that we got enough capital for building the first plant, but then you realize there is another capital requirement, which is a growth capital. We need more money. Now you have to go back, all the way back, and okay, let's just start all over again. So that's one thing which, if I had realized it earlier, maybe I wouldn't have worked in a way that it's a one-type job. It's like all-time, full-time job.
Yeah.
I agree with that. We've learned lots of things over the years. I guess the one thing we learned, and I'd encourage any entrepreneur to pay attention to, is the complementary products that you're selling alongside or into. We were selling our inverters into the fuel cell market, and basically as an OEM product, like a transmission in a car, to these fuel cells, and everybody was so excited. All the investors were so excited about fuel cells. Fuel cells were going to take over the world. We had everybody that tried the inverter loved it. We had 50 demonstrations going at one time, all at the same time, all around the world. It was like the sun never set on our demonstration systems. But in the end, we found the complementary technology, the fuel cell stack itself, didn't have the durability that it was required for our application. For our application, the fuel cell needed to have 40,000 hour life. In the end, and I don't think it's much higher now, it was about 5,000 hours. The fuel cell companies solved that by shifting their focus and going after other markets that didn't need a 40,000 hour lifetime, but kind of left us in the dust. And when I look back on it, I can see the clues that I was getting. It was very secretive, it's intellectual property, but you sit in the meetings and you can listen to the discussions that are going on and just pay attention to the subtext of what's happening, because I think if we were paying a little more attention to that, we could have seen kind of those little messages coming out that maybe these things aren't really running as long as we said they were. So that was one lesson for us too, and fortunately we survived the process. We found another application, the solar application. So in 2006, we launched our first solar product and kind of moved into a new phase of life there.
Great. So maybe we can open it up to questions. There's some mics that people can just walk up to. Maybe just as people are getting up there, any final kind of closing advice that you would give someone who's thinking about starting their business?
I would just say do it. I mean, it really is rewarding. You know, even if that business doesn't turn out in the end, the experience, the contacts, the network, all the things that you'll build up over that time will come in handy down the road, and it'll definitely pay for itself. I know I'm a much happier guy, and I feel a lot of satisfaction from the job. So I would just really encourage people to take the leap and just go all in.
Yeah, you should always be happy. He's a happy guy.
Yeah.
Work like him. But one thing which is very important is believe in yourself. Beg, borrow, steal, but got to make it happen. Once you've decided, taken a decision that you got to do it, you keep at it, keep going at it. It works.
Perseverance. Yeah.
Yep, I would agree with both of those. Go do it, and once you decide to do it, really do it. But don't be in too much of a hurry to grow your business. Make sure you understand where you're at and be realistic about where you're at. And also, I mean, you have to start with an idea. You have to start with a customer in mind. But as you move forward, you may find that that's not the same customer that's going to take you to success. Don't be afraid to change stream. Just make sure you understand what you're doing. And when you do change stream, do it wholeheartedly and understand where you're going. Keep focused, but you can change the focus, but stay focused.
Great. So go ahead.
First of all, thank you all very much for sharing your thoughts and experience. It's fantastic to hear 3 different and distinct stories that have all resulted in success. But actually, my question is kind of a follow-on to what Brent said as his closing comments. Knowing the time that it takes from idea to that first deal or that first customer or the first proof of concept, let's say, what is the thing that or what are the hours that you spend on something that you would most like to have back? So were there things that you spent a lot of time on that seemed like very good ideas at the time, but now that you look back on it, you wasted days and days of, or you could have spent that elsewhere? So thank you very much.
That's a good question. The first 10 iterations.
It's a tough question to answer. I mean, there's certainly you wish it would have worked out great the first time, and you know we ran into a challenge in fuel cells, and you could say, well, maybe that was a mistake. But in the process, we licensed our technology to the largest utility in Germany. That basically provided the funding to commercialize the technology and ultimately transfer it into the solar market. So we didn't know exactly that that's how it was going to turn out when we were doing it. It didn't end up with the success we thought we were after, but maybe I would have done that differently. We spent some energy with a small wind turbine company out of Japan, and that didn't work out. We definitely spent a little more time on that than we probably should have, and mostly that was to try and just save the relationship. Even once we understood that it wasn't really going to work out, there are other factors at play. Maybe we shouldn't have put as much time into that. But it's hard to say what the alternate reality would have been, so it's a difficult question to answer.
Next question, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, hello. I want to ask you guys about your opinion on the Ontario feed-in tariff program. Has that significantly helped your industry or not?
But it doesn't include wax or energy storage, so
I can give you
there.
a quick, I mean, there's a lot of people asking that question this month. It's under review. I spent the last few days talking about that. So we think it's a great program. The execution has not been great. It was promoted as kind of, we talked about it this morning actually, that it was going to be with the government together, lockstep, everybody, we're going to do green energy together, and it hasn't turned out that way. So it hasn't been as smooth as it could have been.
I would just add to that. I mean, I think it's great as well. I was in Germany last week, seeing how far they've come, and I mean, they started with a similar tariff program, and they're probably 4 or 5 years ahead of us, and just seeing how it's transformed their electricity system. You know, it is kind of subsidies up front, but that's how it's designed, and those go away over time. And you can see it happening in Germany. So I think it is something we needed to kickstart it. For our business, it does help somewhat in the fact that given how much nuclear and hydroelectric we have in Ontario, and with all the wind coming online, prices go negative at night, meaning we have just too much electricity at night. They will pay people to take it. So we can actually go fill our bags, get paid to fill them, and paid peak rates to drain them. So it does help us a little bit, but indirectly.
To your point about subsidies, when do you think Cleantech will be at a level where it's actually on par with traditional energy in price terms?
I'll take that one.
Yeah.
Because that often comes up with clean tech and alternative and renewable energy. But what people have to realize is that every form of power production is subsidized. The fact that renewable energy or clean tech is subsidized to level the playing field is only because everything else is. So,
Thanks.
next
now
question.
that you guys are in the manufacturing stage, I was sort of wondering, how do you know when you found the right customer? How do you know when you found the right customer?
So I can take that up. See, there is nothing called right customer. When you start going on to negotiation stage, whoever is giving you the most easiest terms. We are a manufacturer, the way we look at it, and it's a cash cycle is also important for us. What we try to, right now we are in the process of negotiating with different customers. What we try to do is, a person who just says, money is given to you the moment it receives, they receive the product, instead of 30 or 60 days account payable, you get the cash. And the person who is saying, okay, there's not going to be, if the product doesn't work, you get the product back and you have to pay. So it's easiest there. Whoever gives the easiest term is your ideal customer.
The ones who pay, eh?
Yeah.
Those are the best customers.
I would just throw something out that at least in my business, it's a much longer sales cycle because they're big products. We've been down 6-8 months of talking with the customer every second day. And then after a while, you realize they're never really going to buy anything. So it's trying to identify them and limit the amount of time. You never want to not return a potential customer's call, but you do have to do a bit of triaging internally and find out who's real and who's not. Because a young company, you have such limited resources, you can get really distracted easily. So that's all I'd throw out on that.
Thanks. We'll go to the far end. Yep.
Yeah, I just have two parts. First one is when you're trying to get your first customer, what kind of concessions did you have to make, or did you have to make any at all, in terms of like giving them a good discount or helping them make that leap of faith? And secondly, did you ever consider maybe becoming a partner or looking for a partner, and when do you want to do that, or if at all?
Good question.
I can start with that. So there are two parts to this. One is the way I look at it is you got to link it with your investors. So they give you a limited amount of money, you commit something to them. Now you go back to customers and start saying that this is a standard product, we are not going to give you a discount. At the end of it, the money is limited, so if the money doesn't come into your pocket, you will have to raise more money, or you will have to go back to your investors. So depending on that, you got to be flexible, but you cannot go to customers saying that here is a discount, because the moment you say this is a discount to start with as a negotiating point, you are saying your product is not as good as anybody else. The starting position is always either premium or a standard product as anybody else. If it works, it doesn't work at that price point for them to switch, then you start offering discounts, but you cannot offer discount to everybody else. It's always negotiable.
I think the best thing, or if you call it a concession, you could offer is support. TLC to your customer, give them everything they can. But I agree, you don't want to get into a discounting discussion right out of the gate. If you've got a good product, there may be situations where that makes sense. But we always found the best approach was to offer those engineering services and help customers build their business around the product, deliver a business value for free alongside your product that's sold at the market price.
In our case, we almost had to buy our first customer in the terms of no one's going to shell out, $5 or $10 million to say, try to build one and I hope it works. So we kind of had to build it and say, well, you guys can have it after we test it with you for a little while under certain conditions, like you place an order for another one or that sort of thing. So we had to do a bit of buying our first customer. In terms of go-to-market partners, there was a follow-up question, I guess, on that. We've tried. We'd love to have the big ABB, GE, Siemens as our go-to-market partner. They've got the global reach and all the relationships that we want. But getting in their door, convincing them, getting on their priority list is very tough to do when you don't have a customer or a big pipeline and a proven technology. So there's a bit of a timing thing. You want the right partner on the right terms, which probably means you have to take the business past a couple milestones, get some good momentum, then they'll listen and you'll probably get the deal you want versus just trying to get that partner. Anybody that'll listen right out of the gate, it won't be the right partner, it won't be the right terms for you.
Okay, yeah.
Hi. Brent sort of answered a little bit of my question talking about value add, but my question is about copyable products. So the product and service that I'm working on launching, the science is definitely copyable. Hasn't been done yet, but it's copyable. How much does that, I mean, obviously Curtis's product is harder to copy because it takes a lot of money to get into that, but how much does that keep you up at night thinking about other people that can copy what you've put a lot of time and effort into, and what advice do you have in terms of dealing with those kinds of issues?
I'm up every night. Think about that. We have patented technology, so we have a unique topology. We have filed for patents globally, so we're protected in the US, Canada, Japan, most countries in Europe. I think that's important. You have to understand what your technology is to see if it's a patentable or maybe better protected, but just trade secret approach. But I think that's a discussion with your investors too. If it's more of a service that you're offering and it's more just through the delivery, then you just have to be the best at what you do. But certainly, we have patented technology, but things change all the time, and people might find a different way to do the same kind of thing we're doing. So you've got to keep on top of that and just if you follow that intellectual property portfolio approach, keep it fresh. And it does cost some money, but you've just got to keep updating that. And just every time you make a little improvement, those are the little roadblocks you throw down behind you that help keep other people from catching up.
Yeah, I'd say generally same thing. I mean, we've got a lot of IP and patents, but with a good enough lawyer, you can get around almost any patent. So we wrestle quite a bit of, do we spend a whole bunch more money filing all these patents knowing that a big utility could just hire lawyers to go around half of it anyway? Do we not publish patents, keep all that in-house? Trade secrets, we're offshore and underwater. People can't see what we're doing anyway. And so there is a lot of that. But I think staying ahead of the curve, constantly improving, you just keep building on what you have, and it's tougher and tougher to catch up. I have heard through Mars, some networking event, a company that used to sell components, and they would actually put fake circuitry and different things in it to throw competitors off from reverse engineering. So you can go that far if you want to.
No, actually, you don't have to go far. It's almost like a accepted practice that you put dummy elements or dummy materials to throw everybody off. Look, we produce commodity items, so we do not. I do not lose sleep in terms of somebody else picking up my sale. But copying the process or copying the catalyst which we produce, we actually adhere to that. We have dummy elements in the catalyst, which will essentially, if somebody wants to reverse engineer, somebody gets hold of it. It's difficult. It's almost like a standard process for even companies like GM or anybody which use specialized material for their specific parts. So this is what we learned. I was advised by a couple of advisors, so we just said, fine, we'll do it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
This question is actually just for Brent. You mentioned briefly when you were talking about your customer, and you talked about the owner of your solar facility versus the installer. I'm just wondering what the difference is between those two and how you would go about contacting the installer or basically marketing to them versus the owner.
That's interesting. That's the big challenge for the business, and it changes market to market. Kind of the simplest model you could see is we would sell to a distributor. Installers would come buy equipment. That distributor would carry our inverter and all the solar panels and racks and everything. So they buy the equipment there and then sell it to the end customers. So the end customers most of them are only going to buy our inverter once. The installer is going to buy our inverter every week and install it at new houses. So that's the guy making the decision. But our purchase orders actually come from the distributor. So you need to understand those different stages and where the decisions are made. Now, we've set up a successful model in Ontario here. We took that through this fall down into the US and tried to push that model, and it didn't work because the industry is structured. It's a little more mature there. It's been there a long time. So we needed to establish some different relationships there to get our business going. So it does change, and you just have to focus on where is that purchase decision really being made. Where is your value hit the ground, and that's at the end customer, primarily on the product value. But then you need to get that installer to make the decision, understand your technology, and use that advantage to give himself a competitive advantage versus the other installers would be selling. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Hi. I was just wondering, with startups, in your experience, what's been the most important characteristics of people that you work with? So whether it's partners or developers or employees. So just general intelligence, expertise, compatibility. I mean, I can think of a range of things, but with time, what have you found to be the most important characteristics?
So we can take that. So in my early days, the only advice key advice which was given to me was, you got to choose your early people wisely. You got to be compatible with them. The compatibility can be different, but essentially the way I ended up judging was, can the other person really understand and go through the down cycle? See, in a startup, one of the key things is everybody goes through ups and downs. Up, if everything is going good, everybody enjoys. It's a fine time. But the problem is, can you handle your downtime? Can you guys fight among each other and still survive next day and still go out and have beer? So that's the thing which I eventually realized. Got to have the key people, key management team, which can survive with each other in the bad times. We are going to face problems of customers rejecting your product. You don't want to go into a situation that you made error. No, it's a common error. We'll fight it out. Compatibility was the most important thing for us.
Yeah, I think it's much the same. I mean, we have a lot of fun at our office, so we all get along well. But I think me and the kind of co-founder, the original founder that I joined up with, we have a great relationship in the fact that you can't get this guy down if you tried. He's the most positive guy imaginable. I'm a bit more of a pessimistic person, and so we just work very well together. He brings me up when I'm down, yet I bring a bit of real world flavor to his world.
We have a question from the webcast, if I can jump in.
Yep.
So this is a question for Curtis. How did you decide to leave your day job at Deloitte and commit yourself full-time to your company? Do you suggest that entrepreneurs work part-time in their businesses before leaving their day jobs?
I think it would be pretty tough to work part-time in a startup. I don't know if you guys would agree, but there's a million things to do, and it seems like time is so tough. So I tried a bit, to be fair, and I sometimes wonder if that's maybe someone from my old company. It was about 3 weeks I tried to do both. It just wasn't working, and my heart was really with the startup, so that's why I made that decision. But in general, my family's got a bit of a history. My grandfather, my brother, starting companies. I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial desire kind of burning in me, and starting a new family with my wife, just thinking the planet, carbon, I said, you know what, if things are really as bad as you read, I want to be able to say that I really did my best and tried to make a difference. And so it was a little bit of that naivety, grand thinking that really pushed me over the edge.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, all. Thank you for extending your experience and expertise. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm under the impression that all three companies of yours actually manufacture your own product. So my question is, have you considered licensing your technology to someone else, especially at the early stage of a company where there seems to be a tremendous amount of challenge in taking your idea to actual product to a business? Have you ever considered licensing your technology to another people where you can just sit back and take the paycheck?
Yeah,
There's some good
I can
cases
do
of
that. So when we started business, it was any deal is a good deal. So look, one of the first things which happened was an opportunity to license the technology came up, and we did that. So we never shied away from the deal. Like early days, that was the value. The parameters with which we evaluate licensing right now is slightly different because now it's much further across in terms of development or manufacturing. But even now, so we have seen an opportunity come up for picking up technology from a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But look, you got to see where are your values, what do you really want, where are the best benefits. Never shy away from deal. Every deal is a good deal. But just evaluate whether it's good for you right now, your investors, and that's how you evaluate. I don't know if I answered. Yeah.
I have a few thoughts on that. I mean, so we don't manufacture anything. We made a conscious decision, and to be honest, with our board, our business model keeps coming up and up and up. So what we do is we said to keep. So my business partner had a manufacturing plant before, went bankrupt because of inventory issues. So a lot of overhead with manufacturing. So he brought that lesson into our company. We knew very early on, these are gonna be lumpy kind of big sales, and then they're gonna peter, there might be a year between a sale. How do you keep all that overhead? So we said for us to be successful, we need to leverage products that are used in other industries. So for example, the bags, the bladders that we fill with air, they're used in marine salvage to lift ships off the sunken ships off the floor of the sea. So we said, they're already making them, let's have them customize them on our behalf. And we said, let's take that even further. Let's not build our own plants, let's merely just be the systems integrator. So currently that's our business model. We have no manufacturing overheads and we don't finance building our own products. We're an engineering services company. Yet then we get a lot of feedback. You guys are giving up margin. You guys are never going to be able to capture all the margin and be as profitable as you want unless you backwards integrate and start getting into manufacturing. So I think it's a trade-off. If I kind of read into your question, you could just sit back and license your technology, but chances are the amount of value that you're going to capture and put in your pocket versus somebody else is going to be skewed quite a bit the other way. Versus if you did it yourself, you could get a lot bigger and take home a bigger paycheck.
See, one more thing which is important is when you're trying to license technologies, unless until you do it yourself, nobody will really try to even license it. So you got to have a skin in the game, which is the way you start start everything on your own. If at that point it monetarily makes sense that you license it, because that's what your aim is or goal is, fine. But never shy away from an option. All options are good options when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'll just add too, I think it depends a bit on the product as well. It would be very difficult, I agree, to get, some people can do it if it's a really unique idea and it fits right into somebody's business and they can see it. You might have that opportunity, it might be a good one. But our early days with the fuel cell business, as I mentioned, it was a transmission inside a product, and it was always the vision that that would be a licensing relationship in the long term. But in the near term, we had to demonstrate the performance and the reliability of the product. And our customers were busy with their own technology, so they wanted us to deliver a full product for a period of time and then move to either a sub-assembly delivery model or to a licensing model.
So with that, we'll stop questions for now. But if you have more questions, there's plenty of opportunity at the reception, and you'll probably get better answers once they have a drink in their hand. I just want to take a minute to thank them very much for coming out and sharing their insights and experiences with us.